My name is Jay. I'm the creative director of the Independent Picture House, and I'm also the co-director of the Charlotte Film Festival. I'm really happy to be here to moderate this discussion with Allison Cohen from Neon. Just a brief little setup here. Allison currently is the general counsel and president of business and legal affairs at Neon, and previously before that, for well over a decade, was the general counsel and EVP. I think that's executive vice president. Is that right?
It's the same thing.
Okay. Of business and legal affairs at Film Nation. And if you're not familiar with Film Nation, they are, as I took from their website, the leading independent entertainment company that produces, finance, and distributes award-winning films with Neon and many other distributors. So a lot of knowledge here related to legal affairs, production, distribution, all of those sort of things. So start thinking of your questions. We'll have a little bit of a moderated talk for a few minutes. I have some questions that have been prepared that Allison and I have sort of gone back and forth on what are good questions to talk about, and then we'll get into it. So without further ado, please welcome Allison Cohen.
Thank you.
So I guess the first question is, and I asked you this when we were walking over here, was, obviously you're in legal affairs, law, that kind of thing. So how did you start in the law profession and then transition into the entertainment space, and then really now for the last 20 plus years in the film law space, so film distribution and production?
I'll try and make this story short. I started out as a frustrated musician. I played electric guitar in high school, and I wanted, to be a famous rock star. And at a certain point in college, I sort of self-evaluated myself, and I was like, I don't think I'm as good as Eddie Van Halen, so maybe I'll get on the business side of things. And from there, I did a bunch of internships in college. I worked for 2 years in the music business and promotion. And the second job that I had was in music licensing and for Arista Records, which I think is still around. And my boss at the time was like, if you like these deals, like they're little mini deals, you should go to law school. So now I'm going to condense it. I went to law school. I worked in the music business as a music lawyer for 2.5 years. I got a little bored. No offense to any lawyer in the music business. It's an amazing field, and especially now there's such complicated things, and I think I would really love it. But I was sort of like, what am I going to do next? And my firm at the time was a film and music firm. And so I switched to the film department, and the first thing I ever did, and I don't know if any of you are going to know these movies, but I did the financing and production on Storytelling by Todd Solondz and Human Nature by Charlie Kaufman, and I completely fell in love with the film business, and I've been doing it ever since. So I worked for producers, production companies, independent financiers for about 13 years at 2 different law firms. And then I was employee number 11 at Film Nation, as I love to say. And I was there for 16 years, and they were amazing. And then, as now is maybe not surprising to you, I got a little bored, and I was like, oh, well, I've never worked for a film distributor before. And so I was very, very fortunate to get the GC job at Neon when it opened. Sorry if that was too long.
No, that was perfect. We have an hour, so we have plenty of time.
Okay.
I guess before we start, because I think really we probably want to talk about where you are currently, and Neon in particular, especially Neon coming off a Best Picture winner with Anora. But can you just talk a little bit about, before we get talking about specific things as you've really transitioned to working for a film distributor, some things at Film Nation that were either interesting experiments or challenges, or just interesting things that you learned in that space because you were working in a film industry, right? You had worked 13 years, but then now you're at this company that is producing stuff. They're helping with distribution. I mean, they're all over. Like every Roofman, which is at the festival, Film Nation's logo pops up, and you're like, what? What do they have to do with this? This is Paramount, right? But so I guess before we really start getting into talking about Neon, like just some things there that maybe elevated the things you already knew about entertainment law and film law. And then that sort of led you to Neon in that 16 years at Film Nation.
Yeah. So being at Film Nation was so fun because, as you can tell now, I like to learn. And every year of the company for up until COVID, we were doing something new. So the first year, we were mostly a sales agent. And I had previously only worked for producers and production companies and financiers, so I didn't really understand the world of international distribution. So that was a huge learning curve for me, and amazing to learn all about it. And there's so many nuances, and there's so many territories that overlap with each other, and there's so many different things with being a sales agent. I think the biggest thing I learned there was that as an international sales agent, your distributors that you're selling to are your partners as well as the producers who are hiring you to do the job. Like you're not just servicing one side, you have to service the other side because they have to believe you when you say, no, this movie's going to have a theatrical release and it's going to do X amount and it's going to be great for you. So that relationship was very important. And then we did a credit facility, and let's see, what else did we do? And then we started a podcast division, and they have like a thriving podcast division now. Then we got into U.S. television, where they have several things that are in production right now. One thing that came out was, I Know This Much Is True, which I think Mark Ruffalo got nominated for an Emmy. Is that the right one? And I'm trying to think of what else. We got into, and then the last thing we did was Film Nation is very auteur director based, and a lot of the films, everyone says like elevated, but they really are elevated. I mean, last year, Film Nation actually financed and produced Conclave, which was nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards, and Honor as well. So we had 2 horses in the race, which was really fun. So the last thing we did was start a commercial division so that we could actually make some money. So that is like also an entirely different world to learn about. And so, yeah, it was just a constantly evolving. We'd figure out one aspect of the industry, and then once we sort of got it down, we would move to the next, and then we would move to the next, and we'd move to the next.
Can you think of anything, just to put maybe a final kind of nail on Film Nation, if you can speak about them, any particular specific challenges with a certain project or a certain thing you were beginning to start that either legally or business-wise was like a real challenge, not just the normal challenges of getting things through the pipeline, funding, and that sort of stuff? Is there any, I don't know, project that stands out in those years that was like, oh, this was a really difficult one to kind of get to the finish line, or again, a project of sort of starting the next thing, the podcast, or I'm just curious if there's anything there that you might think of.
I will say that every film doing production, legal, and financing for it is like a child. They are all completely different. They all have like a certain host of characters that you kind of have to navigate around. And there are huge challenges, I would say, on 85% of them. But the biggest challenge, I think, that was the most stressful for me was Conclave. This was a very big budget, $22 million, and Film Nation does not have $22 million, like sitting in a drawer somewhere. And so
the Vatican does.
Honestly, that was one of the things that I freaked out about in the beginning. I was like, oh my God, we're going to get sued by the Vatican. And I literally did a deep dive into Vatican and Vatican law to make sure and try and figure out, like, are we going to get sued? Maybe we're not going to get sued? Yeah. So anyway, there was a ton of challenges on that movie. Ray Fiennes deal was very hard to close. The biggest thing, though, was we shot in Italy. And we had a production services company that did a great job once production started, but a huge portion of the financing was through an Italian tax credit. And the Italians are very laid back. And so starting in August, I want to say, apparently the way the tax credit there works is there's a window that open. You can't apply for a tax credit anytime. There's just certain windows, like 2 weeks in the beginning of the year, 2 weeks at the end of the year, and you apply during those windows. And so we kept waiting for the window to open, and we needed the window open so that we could borrow from our credit facility against these tax credits. And from August on, they were like, yeah, no, I'm sure it'll open next week. Oh, no, I'm sure it'll open like a month from now. Oh, I'm sure it'll open like, it's got to open by the end of the year. And that movie, the window did not open until January of the following year after we were like halfway through principal photography. So we had to figure out a way to lend in, borrow against that without having the window open. And there were just so many other challenges. They forgot to budget VAT into the budget. So at some point there was like $1 million problem. And I'm trying to think, oh gosh, and then we had one of the actors, it was still during COVID, and one of the actors was a comedian and wanted to keep going back and forth between different cities. And so there was a whole challenge there with, you couldn't get COVID insurance. And so there was a whole challenge there with the insurance companies, getting them to a place where they would allow him to go and figure out procedures for all of that, and literally 7,000 other things. It was so stressful.
And that's just one movie.
Yeah,
so I can
one
imagine
movie.
that's why they need 11 people, probably more. You said you were number 11. So,
Oh, yeah, number 11. Yeah.
So now you're at Neon and a distributor, and so I'm assuming there's some things that are similar. I mean, law is law, and, financing is financing, but what are some things now working for a distributor that maybe you thought you knew about distribution companies, working with FilmNation and others, and now you're learning maybe aren't the case, or they're different, or strategies, or those kind of things at Neon? So sort of working for a distributor, what kind of things are you learning about distribution that you're like, oh, I never really thought about that, or I didn't know that?
Yeah. Well, okay, so at FilmNation, we went to Sundance many times and sold movies there in like the stereotypical, like, stay up all night long. There's a bidding war between 3 companies, and then you stay up and you finally sign the deal at like 9 in the morning and go for breakfast. And so all of my experience has been from the producer side of selling a movie and how stressful that is. And the biggest thing that I've seen at Neon is it is equally as stressful on the other side, which was just such a huge surprise to me, because I figured, like, they don't need to buy any movie, and, if they don't get this one, but if the CEO of a company really wants a movie, they need to figure out how to get that movie, and it's very stressful for them. At the same time, there are financial constraints, and I didn't realize that models are run on, I knew other companies did it, but I didn't know that Neon did it. Financial models are run for every offer that goes out to try and figure out how far they can stretch to get a particular film. And the pressure of having to have a slate of movies, you can't go 6 months as a film distributor and not have a film to release, and you only want the good ones. And so, but you also, I would say Neon, uniquely positioned, also doesn't have $500 million sitting in a bank account. And so how do you, I don't want to say manipulate people to give you movies, but how do you sell yourselves, right? And what do you do, and what things do you offer to talent and to directors? Mostly it's a very, very, very director-driven company.
Yeah, and I think that's, and I know this happened before you got to Neon, but being at FilmNation, I know that's one of the things that Sean Baker in particular has talked repeatedly about over the last 2 years, about Honora, as how Neon approached him and really was like, we can't give you all of this money, but what do you want, and how can we sort of make that work? So are there other examples of that you've even seen more recently with, again, because Neon has a big slate of movies coming up starting 2 weeks from now, right, with the Jafar Panahi film, and then going all the way through into January with Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice.
Yeah.
So
You
there's
know
like,
our slate better than I do.
Oh, believe me, I asked for all of them for the film festival, and just New York undercuts us constantly, so it's understandable. But yeah, so I wonder if you any of those particular films coming up, Secret Agent, Sentimental Value. I mean, there's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Or just any other films that maybe you're working on that aren't even done yet. That you're starting to see these specific examples of, well, we can offer you this in lieu of just here's a big paycheck and and it'll fund all the stuff you need, kind of thing.
Yeah, what I've seen thus far is that Neon is so director driven. It doesn't matter who you are or what level you are at. We just had a movie come out over the summer called Together with a first-time writer-director, and they treated that writer-director with the same respect that, they treated Sean Baker with Honora or any of our other films. And I think that's one of the really cool things about Neon is it's a cinephile company, really to its core. Everybody who works there, honestly, except for me, because is such a cinephile and knows so much about every single movie that's ever been made. So that to me has been incredibly impressive and really nice to see, and I'm so happy that it is that way.
Yeah. I mean, and I will just add anecdotally that I've also seen that from the programming and the cinema exhibition side, that Neon very much wants to work with independent cinemas and independent companies that are exhibiting films in a way that maybe some others are a little more old school or very traditional kind of booking strategies and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Neon's kind of like, if there's a theater, a cinema that really wants to show a movie, we should probably figure out a way, much like how do we make the movie, how do we figure out how to get that to them so they can get it in front of their audiences? So,
do you know what else they do, which is very cool, is they make
cupcakes.
35 millimeter prints of every single movie that we have. And there is, I can't remember, but you'll probably know, a theater in LA that only shows 35 millimeter.
Yeah, that's what, New Beverly, right?
I can't remember
Yeah,
what the name
Tarantino,
of it. Yeah, but
I think he has two now, actually, that only do 35.
That's just like a microcosm of the whole company, because they are such lovers of cinema, and they feel that every movie should be released.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important thing to think about. Is it's like, if you can't give the filmmaker all this money, but that filmmaker is really intent on shooting on film and exhibiting it in the format that he or she shot it in, could go a long way to sort of saying, I want to sign with these people, as opposed to these people who are just telling me, no, we're throwing it out DCP only, and you're shooting it digitally, right?
Yeah.
So that obviously could be a big thing. Anything else related to distribution in particular that you've learned, or just, again, thought, I didn't really know this, because, again, I'm on the other side, and I never really thought about because that challenge of how do we get the director, how do we get the movie, how do we get that film because the CEO or someone really wants it, versus, okay, now we have it, but there's a whole slew of things there. Yeah.
The biggest thing I didn't realize is how crowded the marketplace is. There are so many movies out there, and I always knew that the most important decision in releasing a film is what the release date is. And I always knew that, you had to look at like what was coming out on that date, what's the week before, what's the week after. What I didn't realize was horror, for example. There are so many horror movies being released. We almost released a movie on October 3rd that we pushed it back a couple weeks. And that had 2 other horror films being released on the same weekend. But we had to do it because every weekend afterwards there were other horror movies that were coming out, and it was like you have to pick which movie you're gonna go up against.
That was Keeper, right? Was that Keeper? The Oscar
No,
Perkins?
Shelby Oaks.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, which you'll see, by the way. Shelby Oaks, very good.
I've heard. I have not seen it yet.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then to figure out, like, you know.
So how are you involved in that process? Or are you involved in that process? Especially, I mean, I don't know, are there negotiations with other distributors, with
Yeah.
other, where you're trying to say, like, look, we're trying to fit in here somewhere, and is there
No,
a legal
there's no
thing? Yeah, I don't know.
negotiations.
I don't know how any of that works.
It's
I
pretty
mean,
cutthroat,
yeah.
I have to say. And I am not involved in that decision. I'm part of the Greenlight Committee, so I decide what movies I help decide with several other people what movies we put into production. But that decision is made by the CEO, our head of marketing, and our head of distribution. I would say there, and other people chime in. The other great thing about Neon is it's very, very, they want to hear everyone's opinion. So it's a very open environment. And, you know, they have cool things like for each movie that we put out, they have a brainstorm session with the entire company where the entire company can be like, oh, to market it, we should do this, we should do that, we should do this publicity thing, like, so that everybody at the entire company can participate, not just the people.
And Together had a lot of that pop-up stuff, right,
Yeah.
related to that film in particular. So you can see how somebody probably came up with that idea to, let's have a
Yeah.
pop-up shop and, you know, to get word out for the film.
Yeah.
You mentioned Greenlight Committee, and this was sort of a twofer thing that you had sort of said, and I'm sort of putting them together. But I'm thinking about the totality of your career and working in legal and business affairs in multiple different ways, and thinking about how different it must be how things get greenlit today versus how they get greenlit even 20 years ago or
Yeah.
30 years ago, but also how things get financed 30 years ago and how things get financed today. So can you just talk a little bit about that, and then maybe in particular or specifically what are the unique challenges at a distributor in greenlighting and financing
Yeah.
versus a production company or somewhere like Film Nation or something
Yeah,
like that?
okay. So the financing hasn't changed at all, actually. There are a couple basic ways to find financing for a movie. The first one is, you know, the super low budget indies, which go to Sundance, and those are usually financed by family and friends of the director. It's usually their first one. The second way is there are pretty established film financiers in the business that people submit their projects to. Film Nation is one of them. Indian Paintbrush is one of them. Like, you know, there are a handful of others. 30 West is another one. And you can submit your projects to those places, and they will finance the whole thing for you. The third way is to use international pre-sales, which is a lot of what Film Nation did. And this is where you can't do it without a full package. So you have to have the director, the star or stars. You know, usually there are like 2 or 3 people who are called an essential element, and that means that the distributor doesn't have to buy the movie if those people are not in it. And so as a sales agent, you take out that package, you pre-sell it, and then the producer uses all of those contracts that you've entered into, which say, you know, when we deliver you this movie with these 3 essential elements, you're going to buy it for X. And they will take that to a bank, and they will get a bank loan. And sometimes they need, you know, a couple million as a little filler. Sometimes entire movies are financed off of pre-sales alone, and domestic is basically just gravy. And I feel like that has been pretty consistent the whole time I've been in the business. The thing that has changed is that the international market has gotten tougher and tougher. And my former colleague at Film Nation used to say, you know, there's a bullseye, and maybe 15 years ago, the bullseye would be as big as this whole room, and then it got smaller and smaller, and now the bullseye is like this big. So I would say That's the biggest challenge right now, is that the international market is just not, I mean, literally people used to, this is a little bit before my time, but people used to go there and people were throwing money at movies, and so many movies were getting made, and now the business is so hard that you really have to have something incredibly special that you think will be a big theatrical release in order to sell it internationally.
And is that the reason why, I mean, there's probably lots of reasons, but what do you think is that reason? Is it just that they don't want to throw money at something unless they know it's going to guarantee to generate $1 billion or something like that? I mean, no,
Yeah.
obviously not $1 billion, but
No, I think actually it's a couple things. I think when I first started, independent film was not the coolest thing, and then for 10 years it got bigger and bigger, and all of the big film studios opened up their own independent divisions, and it was amazing. And then I would say for the last 20 years, it's been kind of going down this way. But I think video is one. I think that there are just fewer windows that can be monetized right now. And so if they're going to take a chance on a movie, and there's just a much bigger percentage of whether they're going to make money or not is relying on theatrical, as opposed to, there used to be a pay one and a pay two and a free TV and a video. And, there are still different windows now. There's, TVOD and EST and the SVOD window, but, and video, although video is very, very, very small at this point. And so I just think there are fewer windows to exploit, and so they're making less money, and therefore they can spend less money.
And so obviously this kind of leads into the next question a little bit, which is when you think about the legal side of making movies, money is obviously a big piece of that, right?
Yeah.
Because you're entering into these contracts, millions of dollars flying all around. So what are the financial dangers in this world that you sort of come up against or have to navigate with both either Film Nation or especially Neon now, a distributor, which, one wrong turn for a distributor could probably wipe them right out, right?
Yeah.
Especially a smaller distributor
Right.
like that. A big studio might still have a chance. But also other sort of legal dangers that distributors and finance or production companies, et cetera, you've kind of been navigating and sort of realizing like, oh, this is really like, if we don't cross the right T or dot the right I,
Right.
where we could get in trouble here, or we could create a problem that steamrolls when we get to the end and go, oh no. Yeah, are there any things in particular that you can think of related to that, or not
I
necessarily
think
specific films, but just general kind of things?
Yeah, I think the risks of just basic production of a film and finance of a film are pretty much the same. They've always been, I'm a very conservative lawyer, so I usually don't cash flow, like I'll cash flow a certain amount until the chain of title is done, and then a certain amount until the essential element agreements, who I talked about before, until those are completed. Because one of the challenges that's actually happened to a friend of mine is that he had a movie that was starring an A-list person, and they did not have her agreement done, and they had to build this enormous set. So they spent $2 million on this set, and then she backed out of the movie. So I just don't want that to happen to me. So there's that. I think, Rust is an example of something that can go very wrong on a film. But,
Are you all aware, Rust? Okay.
I had a smaller thing. We had this very small indie movie we did at Film Nation, and a light fell on our lead actor's face on day 3 of principal photography. So that was an issue. And then I've had people drop out because they found out they were pregnant. I've had movies that have had to go into production like several months earlier than what was planned because a person finds out they're pregnant. I've had movies where, and I'm sorry, I don't think I'm answering your question, but I've had movies where like the lead actor is just completely drunk the entire time. And
But
like,
I would
what
think
do
that
you
would.
do
I think
with
that does answer the question, though, because I do think if you've entered into contracts and you have these things, and now you're in this delicate
Yeah.
You know, do we have to get rid of this person? How do we navigate
Yeah.
that they might hurt someone else? I mean, that's
I
all.
will say the morals clause is a huge thing that's come up because now I can't remember the name of the movie, but about 3 years ago, do you remember this? 3 or 4 years ago, there was a movie that was bought at Sundance for millions and millions of dollars, and then something. What was it?
Yeah, the Nate Parker film. Is that Birth of a Nation?
Yes,
Is that, yeah.
yes, Birth of a Nation, exactly. So so that spurred an entire new. I mean, I think they were in there for a while, then they sort of went away, but now they're back in. You're not allowed to do them for writers. The WGA has negotiated that right away. But
Have you noticed too either that, especially being at Neon now, that those morals clauses are getting even broader because of social media, and now you have people making comments on social media, and in the political climate we're in now, maybe even a company that is very filmmaker centric and very sort of like, we want stories from diverse populations, but at the same time we don't want the person sitting in the Oval Office kind of looking in our direction, but because someone's out there, stating their free speech and all that kind of stuff, which you should all do, by the way. But
that actually,
edit that part out of
interestingly
it.
enough, that's one of the big asks that all the talent lawyers make is, and I think it depends on which studio they're negotiating with as to how lenient or strict that studio is, but they always make a statement that, political beliefs do not trigger this clause because they want their clients to be able to speak freely.
Kind of a side question, just not directly related to this, but it made me think of it when you were talking about Together, first-time filmmaker, and Neon does a lot of first-time filmmakers or their second films, or right as they're starting to go from, I guess, sort of being true indie filmmakers to being more sort of like indie filmmakers with a substantial budget, and there's a lot of filmmakers in the room here. So, and you mentioned greenlit. How does people in this room, how do they get to that space? Is it simply they've done some things and they've played festivals, and then Neon or one of those distributors kind of goes, oh, who's that over there? Mm-hmm. Or is there a way to, I don't want to say pitch, but hey, I'm here, I've been doing this for 10 years, and I've been making these features, and they're getting awards, and they're playing festivals, and how can you take a look at my thing? Or, I mean, how does that work in terms of, which might be a question that I think most people in here might have.
Yeah.
How do I get to Neon to make a movie with
Your
you?
agent is the answer.
Okay.
I think the first step for a filmmaker is you have to have an agent because most studios, including Neon, have a non-solicitation policy where you can't just email us your script and say, hey, can you read this? And unfortunately, that is because of the number of lawsuits that have happened with people who are like, oh, but I sent you that script in 1994 and you're using, and one of the biggest things, this is the biggest surprise to me being at Neon, is it's public so I can say it, we got sued on Together for copyright infringement of this script with where the lawyer had not seen our movie or read our script or I think seen the other person's movie. Like, he must have, and that infuriates me so much. And they, instead of contacting us and asking us, hey, we think this is basically the only thing that the two movies have in common is that at some point people are fused. But this other movie is a complete opposite of what this movie is. And so I think if you're a big studio and you get a couple of those, you're like, I cannot risk, I can only take scripts from professionals, and the only basic way to tag someone as a professional is if they have an agent or a manager. Basically, those are the ways to do it.
Who knows the kind of the chain of command and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question I have, and then I'd like to open it up to questions. but and it's kind of going back to Film Nation a little bit, but you mentioned because they were sort of doing movies and then they were doing podcasts and then TV and does Neon doesn't do TV yet, right?
Neon doesn't do TV yet.
Yeah, yet is the key word, I think.
Yeah.
Right? But what's the difference between, or is there a difference between, because those two things, TV and movies, used to be completely different things, right?
Yeah.
The way we thought about them, and it seems like now people are jumping back and forth between those mediums. Things are being presented that are television that people are like, why is this not a movie? And, vice versa. So I wonder if there's any just differences that you see, though, in those very specific mediums that at least we still have.
Yeah.
That you've sort of dealt with or anything like. I'm sort of interested in that a little bit,
well,
too.
first, I'm going to go off topic and say streamers have ruined the world, because they have.
As a person who works at an independent movie theater, we love that.
They, the biggest problem with them is that because they didn't need to, remember I was talking about like the P&Ls, they didn't have to do that. How much they paid for a movie or a TV show didn't need to make any sense whatsoever. And they overpaid the entire industry for 4 or 5 years to where, and I'll just give an example, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you could get an actor to star in your movie for like, let's say it's a $10 million movie. You could get them to star in it for $250,000. Now, you cannot get anyone to star in a movie, who's like of star quality, like below $1 million. Like, they just won't do it unless it has clear Oscar written all over it. And then maybe you can get them down to 500, but they don't go like a penny below 500. And not only did they do that, but they paid all the character actors who used to work for scale or, for Schedule F, like, $65,000. Oh, no, I think it's 80 now. And they started paying those guys like $300,000 or $400,000. So then you couldn't even get character actors to it just the cost of films has gone up so much because they were all competing against each other. And now it's funny. I talked to a friend of mine at Netflix, and I'm like, so what are you guys doing now? You trying to, because you have a boss now who actually cares how much the budget is, and she's like, oh yeah, we've had a lot of really tough conversations because they're all starting to come back, which is kind of what I hoped. Yeah. I hoped it would be like a big bubble, and then everyone would need to start to make money, and at some point, all the salaries would come down to, and listen, I don't want anyone to work for free. I just want movie stars to,
Yeah, but some of that character actor stuff in particular that you're talking about was based on you work for a low wage, and the back end that you get from the the repeat viewings and the sales of whatever the DVDs or something will be money that's coming in, residuals and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
and
they're
that
all
was
starting
sort of
to do that too.
Yeah.
They're coming up with their own back ends.
Yeah,
points,
and
Apple points.
But if you're paying them $300,000 or $400,000, it's sort of like that might have been what you got, for the life of a Rockford Files episode for 25 years or 30 years, and now it's like, so why are we giving you on?
Yeah, it's just been very bad.
It's
for
a theater
film.
thing as well.
Been very bad for independent.
And I think Film Nation has some relationship to theater as well. So right, a little bit.
Nope.
No, okay. I thought they did. I thought they did a couple of productions they had a toes in, but theater's the same way. Where now that
live theater.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant theater chains.
Yeah, theatrical productions. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we started. I don't know that they're going to do it anymore that I left, but that was kind of like my little passion project because I felt like you can't be a film company based in New York and not support your local community, and you need to invest in theater. So
yeah, and I think you're seeing it a lot more with other production companies or producers where the avenues and the chains of sort of getting money. It's like, well, because these actors are jumping on stage for a year and then jumping off to go to TV, and it's like, well, we have to be in that business too because there is a money-generating thing there.
Yeah.
I want to open it up to questions because I know we're going to run out of time. So let's, John. Yeah.
I heard you talk a little bit about this. Right now, the business is hurting pretty bad for production. The average in New York was like 750 projects a year on the eastern region. And now it's more like 250.
yeah.
do you think that was driven by all those crazy budgets that
Yes.
had to, like, bring it to the numbers, and now they don't have the numbers to spend?
Yeah, I mean, everything has gotten so expensive. The cost of money, unfortunately, we all got used to the cost of money being free because the interest rates were so low. The cost of money is so expensive now. The cost of, and I'm not saying this as an anti-union person, I'm just saying, like, it is what it is. The cost of the unions now, all of the unions, it's so unbelievably expensive. Like, when I first started out, you could definitely make a movie for $1 million and be union, and now there is absolutely no way to do it because all of these different fees, and then coupled with the expectations of the actors, like the lead actors who got used to getting paid so much money from the streamers for so long, it's hard for them now to kind of go backwards in pay. Yeah, everything is just massively more expensive and harder. And so it's really hard to that's the biggest challenge in greenlighting movies is that you want to greenlight them, and they make sense at a certain budget, but you can't make that film work within that budget because of all of these costs.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Tevin Scott. Tevin Scott. I'm a filmmaker. I know that filmmakers, the best way to get to Neon is through the agent. But are there people at Neon who are actively looking or scouting out talent, or is there specific festivals or a specific place?
Oh, yeah.
Which ones would that be?
Yeah, like if you have, and everybody does, it's not just Neon. If you have something at Sundance, Cannes, or, oh my God, I'm blanking on the two. There's the Tribeca Film Festival in New York and Toronto, and one more. South by Southwest. Yeah. Plus, for Neon, international film festivals, although I don't think that they go to all of them. But that's the biggest way, I think, if you don't have an agent, to get discovered, because all of the studios, like every single distributor, goes to all of their places because everyone's trying to find the next big thing, like the person who's super talented, like who nobody knows about. And then we want to glom our hands onto you and not let you go. But anyway, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, over here, there's a gentleman. Then we'll
Yeah, you mentioned back whenever you were at Filmation, you pull these all-nighters on these bidding wars for certain films. And I was just curious, was there a particularly intense film that you guys had to get that was one of the toughest?
Well, on the Film Nation side, we were selling the movies, so we were very happy.
They like staying up late for that.
Yeah. I don't know on the other side because I haven't been through it yet at Neon, but I can imagine it's incredibly tense. Because even when we're just trying to get projects that haven't been shot yet, but we want them, everybody is very, very, very passionate. I will say that. So I don't want to say it's tense. No one yells at each other if they don't get it. But yeah, they're all just a bunch of very, very passionate cinephiles.
My name is Devin. I'm an independent producer. My question is about how early should we be engaging a distributor, and as well as thinking about marketing. And is it realistic to be reaching to a distributor for money ahead of a production to get money for it to bring in?
It depends if you, again, I hate to say it, it depends if you have an agent. If you have an agent and you can get help packaging your project, that is, a lot of the agencies, they have entire departments that do that. They're called the Independent Film Group at all of them. And sometimes if they represent, let's say they represent a writer and the writer has a script that's really great, and the personal agent will send it to the indie film group, and the personal agent will say, I will help cast this and attach a director and whatever, and then we're going to need you guys to find financing. And that is those departments' sole job is to take packages from the agencies and get financing for it. But I think if you if you don't have representation, I mean, I think it's kind of the same thing as like the non-solicitation thing. So I would say your best bet is to make stuff without distribution and hope that it's amazing and bring it to get into Sundance or South by Southwest or, you know, any of these festivals. Because if you sell it there, like, I mean, I can't guarantee you 100%, but you'll definitely get an agent. Like,
Okay, can I follow up with one more that might be useful to everybody here? How can you find an agent if you don't have a film in Sundance or South by?
honestly, I don't know. I think agents take submissions. I think they take blind submissions. But I also think it's helpful, like, if you've won a film award or you've won like a screenwriting contest or anything like that. But you also, as a producer, I feel like probably harder than if you're a writer or director because, you know, the writer and director have things to submit and, you know, producers have to, you have, like, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, too, because I do know that managers and agents, regional festivals, depending, you know, bigger cities, Chicago, especially Los Angeles, I mean, they will go to those festivals and look for work and then kind of maybe see something, a short film or a feature, and go, I think there's something here, maybe I should at least reach out to that person and have a conversation. So that is, and it's also theatrically too. I mean, the people in the theater, you know, those managers will go see stuff at festivals and and in the theaters or whatever to kind of say, oh, does this person have representation?
But if I could say one other thing, most of the producers that I've come into contact with have either started work, you know, as an assistant at a production company, like you have to move to New York or LA and like work your way up there, or they've worked their way up through physical production where they start off as a PA and then they keep getting higher and higher and then they're a line producer and then they get popular as a line producer and then they segue over into producing.
Other questions? I see a hand in the back there, yeah. Yeah.
So Neon wouldn't be hiring the editors directly because on all of the movies that we produce, there's going to be a producer and a line producer and a director. And honestly, I don't know how they, like from what I've seen, and so this is going to be unhelpful to you at all, I'm so sorry. But from what I've seen, the director and the producer are like, who should we get to edit this? And then they have a list of names that they go after, and then that's how they start. There are editor agents. I don't know if they take people who haven't done anything yet, but there are a couple, like Gersh I know has a pretty big practice where they just represent below the line crew. And so I'm assuming that there are, I think CAA has one as well. So I would try and reach out maybe to those guys, and if you have, like, I'm sure at school you did projects, and so you can give samples of like your work and things. Yeah, that's probably what I do. And then I would just apply to things and, you know, kind of like work your way up in the same way like that a PA has to work their way up.
Can I add something to that? And then I'll get to this question. You had professors who taught you editing, correct? Yes. They should have contacts. You should reach out to them and say, who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to go intern with? Who's working on a project right now I can shadow? That will gain a lot, I think. And again, I'm not a production person, but from what I know of production people, a lot of it is exactly what you said, which is get on a project, be really good at what you do. I use the Steve Martin, be so good they can't ignore you.
Yeah.
And then it might be you're just lifting boxes, but then it's like, oh, I'm an editor. Oh, well, we need somebody to do this making of thing over here while we're doing this. That gets you more product, that gets you more jobs. So, but I think the best place to start could even just be like, those professors are in that industry somehow. They have connections. You should use their connections. So.
Oh, and the one other thing is, I don't know if everyone in this room knows about entertainmentcareers.net, but that's the greatest website in the world. And, you know, I've only personally used it for the legal tab, but they have tabs for literally everything. Entertainmentcareers.net. And they have a ton of production work on there. I know on the legal front, there's, you know, it's, I would say, 80% LA, and then like 15% New York, and then 5% scattered everywhere else. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I've seen actually like production, because I'm looking for, whatever. I'm looking for my son. My son just graduated college.
He can look for himself.
I know he can, but I'm such a mother hen.
Yeah, you had a question, yeah.
Yeah, so when you were talking earlier about the shrinking of the secondary markets as far as revenue streams are concerned. Is there any thought to specialty physical releases? Because there are those that may consider it to not be as niche as everyone says that it is. Meaning, even though there is the digital wasteland, like maybe we have a star secondary market in that physical media space to have special collector's editions, invest in good material. There are competitors in a similar space that are doing these specialty releases.
Uh-huh.
Is there any thought that?
Do you mean like Criterion?
No, so like, I'm sorry, I hate to say it, probably for sake of.
Movie? Are you going to say movie?
No, I'm sorry, the other one. The other
A24?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry. They do special.
I have very good friends at A24. I personally have no beef with them.
I love both of y'all, but like a lot of the neon releases, when we're looking at a specialty release, it is partnered with Criterion or with these other
Yeah.
organizations. Doing an organic specialty physical release of your media. What would be?
Oh, we're actually doing that now.
Say that's changing.
Yeah, we hired, we started merchandise about, I guess, a year and a half ago, and they brought in a head of merchandising and another very senior person, and we've just bought all of our back catalog from Universal, and we are going to be starting to do that. Only on, and I don't know the details of it, and it's only on titles that make sense, but, you know, for titles that make sense, yeah, definitely, we're going to start selling our own physical goods.
Yeah, Longlegs and I think the Monkey were the first two that, yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
First of all, I can't thank you enough for being here on behalf of all of us. I feel like we're just so honored to
Oh,
have
thank
you.
you.
I just wanted to clarify with the sales, with an agent, do you mean a film sales agent? And then also, I know there are so many different avenues for people like us who are writers, directors, filmmakers, who are chasing this career and this passion and dream. We could go to Sundance or make a good film that really kicks ass and stands out, or we get an agent and we pitch. There are so many different avenues, but what do you think? I know it's a loaded question and it's not a blanket. I know it's not going to be a blanket statement answer, but what would you recommend for a first-time filmmaker getting which type of agent and then which avenue to take, which path to pursue?
Right. So, do you have shorts that you've made?
Yes.
Okay. I would send your shorts to agents.
Okay.
I don't know who are the best ones for which particular, like, you know, like, are you a writer director? Or are you just,
So my short film is a true story, so I feel like that's a big selling point, and it's promoting mental health, grief, and suicide awareness. So a very heavy topic that isn't highlighted in film, I would say. So that's my only thing I have to present. But
Yeah.
my short film.
So is there a way, I know there's a way that you can pay to get studio system. I'm not sure if there is a way that you can figure out which agents represent what people. But I would try and figure out who are the agents that represent a lot of, because I feel like there are agents who represent a lot of auteur people, and then there are agents who represent a lot of like big action directors, and they seem to specialize, like not all of them, some of them run across the thing, but I would maybe, just to narrow your search, try and find those people. And I would also accost assistants.
Okay, we have to wrap it up, unfortunately, but please stick around, get a drink, hang out, or obviously the festival continues this evening and through Sunday, so please stick around, maybe talk to Allison if you have a few minutes to hang around, get a drink, come over to IPH, whatever. So thank you all for being part of this. One more round for Allison Cohen, Neon,
Thank you.
and that's it. We're done.